Lesson 15 is a big lesson. So, because of that, we are splitting this up into two parts. You'll have two different parts to lesson 15. One will be this week, the second part will be next week. So far in Unit 5, you've done a lot of things where you're starting to look at data models. We've looked at things like what type of pizza order, what type of ice cream, how Netflix uses data, Waze, Amazon. And last week, in lesson 14, you took a look at how to add points to essentially a quiz to make a recommendation on what type of vacation somebody should go on. So you're starting off with kind of a revisiting of lesson 14, and in this it has this link here that will allow you to see how code.org actually set up the points for their stuff. There's no right or wrong way on how you set up the points for the answer choices, but this kind of shows you what it would look like if you were to create this as an actual app. So you could go ahead and mess around with this and look at code.org's things. So like if you chose pizza, super strength, and the mouse, it says, hey, you should go to an amusement park. That's just there for so that you can see how assigning points actually allows you to then make a recommendation. It's kind of like a lot of those surveys that you might take on something like BuzzFeed. So for lesson 15, what you're going to be doing though is you're going to want to actually figure out, well, what's your own question that you want to be able to recommend an answer for. So you're going to start off by coming up with what is the question and what are the four possible recommendations. In lesson 14, it was dealing with vacations. And then from there, you need to develop a series of questions. What we're doing is we're actually, unlike 14, where we just assign point values, with lesson 15, we're going to look at collecting data in the first part. And then in the second part, we'll analyze the data so that then we can set up a quiz to make recommendations. So it's asking you to create a few different questions. And then you're also going to ask them what is their preference based on the question that you're trying to answer up here at the top. I know all that sounds a little confusing, so I wanted to provide an example of this. So I went off the walls with mine a little bit and I decided, hey, what type of weird food should you try? And I listed 4 different types of food down below. And then I wanted to come up with what type of data I wanted in order to gather information, gather data, so that way then I could create a quiz in part 2 of lesson 15. So in this first part of this box here, when I'm developing my question, it asks like what type of data, describe the kind of information you want to collect. Because of the fact I'm dealing with really weird foods, I decided to ask a couple questions to figure out how daring a person is. So if you could only ride one ride at an amusement park, which would you choose? Merry-go-round, roller coaster, pirate ship, log flume. And I went on and came up with a second question and a third question. Then you have your fourth question that you're going to put onto a survey, which is actually asking the person after they answer these 3 initial questions, well, which one of these would you actually do? And in my case, which one of these foods would you try? Because of the fact that these are weird foods, I decided I'd include a description of what each food actually is. And when I made my survey, I actually uploaded a photo as well so that people could see the photo. The idea behind this is that when people actually take the survey that you're going to create as part of lesson 15, part 1, they'll be able to answer the questions and then make their answer on how they would actually choose your preference question, the thing that you're trying to figure out. That way you can use the information from these 3 questions in part 2 of lesson 15 to see, well, gee, a lot of people that answered roller coaster also chose cheetah and also chose century egg or something like that. And that way you might know that, hey, if they choose cheetah, maybe I should throw 2 points towards century egg. If they choose roller coaster, maybe I should throw 2 points towards the century egg. So once you have your list of questions and things like that, it is time to create your survey. I've already created a survey and I'll show you how to get into this. This is a Google form, but you'll see I have it listed as it's my survey, my first question, and it says in the directions in the document that your first question should be, what is your name, first and last? This is very important for you to do. Make sure that you include a question that's asking for the responder's name. Then I went ahead and I added all my questions. My first question in my example was, if you could ride only one ride at an amusement park, which would you choose? And so I copied that and the answer choices over into this Google form. I did the same for the second question, the third question, and like I said, for the fourth question, I actually added images as well to help people so that way they could actually see what it is that they're actually clicking on, because some people might not have ever heard of a century egg or a fried tarantula or balut or a live cobra heart or know what it looks like. So I figured a picture would be a good thing. So to show you how to actually create a Google form, there are a couple ways to get to it, but the first step that you need to do is you need to go to Google Drive. If you are signed in already, fine. You could just click on here and go to Drive. If you're not signed in, you could always go up to the address bar and just type drive.google.com. And then it'll ask you to sign in and do all that stuff, but it'll take you to your Google Drive. Now, I've set up a folder in here for a test Google form, which you can do or choose not to do. That's up to you. To start a new Google form, you're going to come up in here and click New. And you see it lists Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. You might have one other option, but if you go to this More, then you'll be able to find your Google form. So when you first open a Google form, this is a pretty simple document to work with. So you want to start off with, whose survey is this? In this case, this is Mr. Olson's survey. And then we're going to start with questions. You want to name your form. If you click here, it will just automatically take what you typed in here and put it up here. So for your first question, like I said, what is your name? And we want to make sure that we're listing this as first and last. And you'll see, if you notice that, this switched from multiple choice to short answer. It will actually see what you're kind of typing here, analyze it, and decide what type of an answer format. But if it messed it up, you could always switch it by clicking here and going back to multiple choice. So now that we have this first question, we need to start asking our survey questions. To add a question, you just click on this Add Question button. From there, you could start actually typing in your survey questions, or else copy pasting them in. So just to give you an example, what picture looks best? And then you have picture one, the next line, and you see when I did that, it added another option there, so I could add a third option. Picture two, picture three, etc. You're going to go through and you're going to create all of your questions. You should have a total of what is your name, your three questions, and then your preference question with what you're actually trying to figure out. So there should be a total of 5 questions that you're asking. If you want to add a picture, you can do it in a couple of different ways. If it's part of the question itself, as you're typing the question, you see that it shows this little photo icon here, so you can click on that to upload a photo. If you wanted to do it much like I did in my example here, where it's part of the answer choices, as you're typing in your answer choice, you can see that there's this add image icon here. So you could click on that, upload, browse, find where it is that you have your photos, hit open, and it will put the photo right there. So going back to the one that I've already completed, once you have your survey completed, we need to get this ready for people to actually take your survey. The easiest way to do this is to go up here, and on the top you see this little icon with an eye that says preview. If you click preview, it's going to open up a new tab. And you can see that this is showing it as like an actual survey where I could actually click on answer choices and actually submit it. So once you have this preview open, you need to copy your URL up top And on your document, it's asking you to post the link to your survey in this field here. So there it is. I have a link there. Then it's going to ask you to actually look at taking other people's surveys. Well, that means that you also need your survey accessible to other people as well. So there's the second document that's going to be posted on Google Classroom that looks like this. And on this one here, this is where you're going to be posting your survey. So you're going to want to scroll down until you find an empty box so that you can post your own survey. Type in your name and paste a link to your survey. Like I said, it's very important that you use the URL of the preview, not the actual one that you can edit. If you use the one that you can edit, then nobody can take your survey. You must use that preview screen. So once I have posted my survey, you see that it has 10 different boxes down here for other students to be able to take my survey to give me data that I'm going to need to analyze then when we get to part 2 of lesson 15. So the last part of part 1 of lesson 15 is once you have your survey posted, it's asking you to take 10 other students' surveys and then record whose surveys you're taking in here. So just to give you an example of this, I filled out this field already with some footballers, Mr. Vigna's name up here, and this is a link to that pre-test that we took at the beginning of Unit 5. So I could go ahead and, since there's one spot still open here, I can go ahead and put in my name here. And since I know now that I'm taking Mr. Vigna's survey, come back here, and for student 1, put in Mr. Vigna. And then I would go ahead and take his survey. Once I'm done with that, I would find another student and repeat the process, fill it in for student number 2, continue to student number 3, student number 4, student number 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If on this form you see that all of these boxes are full, that means that everyone's taken the survey. It already has 10 responses. That one is essentially shut off at this point in time. Nobody else should take that one. The idea here is that we're trying to make sure that every student has 10 responses or close to 10 responses to their survey. So if the boxes are full, keep going down the list. Find one that is open. This might mean that you have to wait a day and come back and check the list again to see if any new ones are posted. We understand that, but that's what you're going to be looking at doing. Now, there is something that we did put in here in highlighting, and we also have it on the document here as highlighted. Sorry. As soon as it loads. We also have it on the document in here, and it is highlighted. If you put your name down as having taken somebody's survey. Remember I said the first question should be asking, what is your name? If we learn later on that, hey, I had 10 students say that they took my survey, but only 6 did, we're going to reach out to that student and figure out which ones actually did take the survey so that we could actually come back to this assignment a week later and retroactively remove points because you didn't actually take the survey, you just filled in names on your box. It is important that you take the survey because for part 2 of lesson 15, you're going to be using that data that you gain from these surveys in order to complete lesson 15.